Hi, my name is Anton Evans,
Hello, my name is Abdul Bashir.
and today we'll be talking about Ruby programming. So, a little bit about Ruby. Ruby is very beginner friendly, it is dynamic, it is an interpretive language, and is object oriented. So, Ruby is really good for programmers, especially those that are in the gaming industry. It is a high programming language, meaning it is very close to English, and it has a really good community. So Ruby is the eighth largest Stack Flow community. It's the fifth largest meetup community and the third most targeted language at GitHub. So the creation of Ruby happened in 1995 by Marx, who created Ruby 0.95. He was inspired by his languages his favorite languages that were Perl, Smalltalk, Ida, and Lisp. The overview of the presentation. So the goal of the presentation is just to give you a really good understanding of what Ruby is and the criteria. We'll be going over the data types, the operators, the data structure, the expectation handles, the pros and cons, and a demo. And we'll also be going over the paradigm. So first off, data types. So data types are Boolean, the symbols, integers, floating point, rational numbers, nil values, string, array, and hashes. So Boolean. Boolean is where you either get a true or false statement. Every number that is not zero represents true, and false is represented by zero. False is the default value. You may be completely familiar with this as in C++, false is zero, and everything else is either true. So symbols are known as your plus, your minus, your greater than, your less than, equal than. All of those are known as symbols inside of Ruby. Also integers. So integers fall between negative infinity to positive infinity, and it is really good because Ruby isn't divided into where you have a lot of broken down integers. Every integer can be founded inside this. Floating point is where you can represent numbers as decimals. So this is where you have a float or a big decimal class. The big decimal class is the call class in Ruby, and Ruby standard, and it's a part of Ruby's standard library. So you wouldn't have to also turn it in. In addition to the floating points, you can use rational numbers, which are basically the same as a floating point. Other than that, rational numbers are used because you want to avoid rounding errors. So this is where you want to get whole numbers. Nil value is also known as null value, but in Ruby they say nil. You may know null as C++ or Python. It is referred to as null. And null is just used where there's an absent value. So that means that the vector or the array is empty. So you enter in a null value. So a string is where you use your double quotes or your single quotes, and you just refer to a word, a letter, a sentence, anything like that that you're trying to insert into plain English so that it spits right out of the code. Also, this is what we use for like our input or output, like exception handles, where we output a statement, we use a string. So an array and hashes are a collection of objects. They group objects into one place. Arrays are ordered collectively of objects, and hashes are key value pairs.
Now we're gonna talk about operators. Ruby supports a rich set of variables, as you expect from a modern language. Most operators are actually called methods. For example, a plus b is interpreted as a point plus b, where the plus method is where the plus object in the where the plus method in the object referred to by variable a is called with b as its argument. For each operator, there is a corresponding form of abbreviated assignment operator. First, we're gonna see the arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators take numerical values as their operand and return a single numerical value. The standard arithmetic operators are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Next, we're going to talk about the comparison operators. Comparison operators take simple values, number or string as argument, and use to check for equality between two values. Ruby provides the following comparison operators. Next, we have the continuity of the comparison operators. Next, we're going to talk about the assignment operators. In Ruby, assignment operator is done using the equal operator. This is applicable both for variables and objects, as string, floats, and integers are actually objects in Ruby. You always assign object. And we have the bitwise operators. In Ruby, bitwise operators are allowed to operate on the bitwise representation of their argument. Here we have an example of the some bitwise operator and description, and also the example. Now we have the logical operators. The standard logical operators are AND, OR, and NOT, and they are supported by Ruby. Logical operators first convert their operand to Boolean value and then perform the respective comparison. Here we have an example of we have the operators, description, and examples. Next we have the ternary operator. Ternary operator logic uses condition, true, return value statement to shorten your if-else structure. It first evaluates an expression for a true or false value and then execute one of the two given statements depending upon the result of the evaluation. And here is the ternary operator. Next we have the range operator. Sequence ranges in Ruby are used to create a range of successive values consisting of a start value, an end value, and a range of values in between. In Ruby, these sequences are created using 2-period or 3-period and 3-period range operator. The 2 dots form create an inclusive range, while the 3 dots form creates a range that excludes the specified high value. Next, we're going to talk about the data structures. Like other programming language, the common database structure in Ruby are arrays. Ruby has arrays which are like Python's list. And second, we have the hash. Ruby lets you call hash on anything regardless of whether it really makes sense to use it as a hash key. This allows it to be used to speed up comparison, while Python only allow it to be used on immutable data type, which kind of makes sense but really makes assumptions which are not always guaranteed to be true. And we have stack and linked list, set, tree, and graph. Next, we're going to talk about paradigm. Ruby is not like your average programming language. It does not have one paradigm but many. Ruby uses different paradigms which make it unique in itself. The common programming paradigms include our imperative programming, with an explicit sequence of commands that update state. And second, we have functional or applicative. Programming which function calls that avoid any global state. Third, we have the function level. Combinator, programming with no value at all. And last, we have object-oriented, programming by defining objects that send message to each other. Objects have their own internal state and public interfaces. Object orientation can be class-based, like which means object get state and behavior based on membership in a class, or prototype based, which means the object get behavior from a prototype object.
We'll now go over the control flow objects that are a part of Ruby. So you have if statements, case statements, while statements, for loops, array each statements, break next statements, and a redo statement. So first we'll go over the if statement. So the if statement is similar to that of Python, other than that Python uses a colon. You see right here it has a colon, where over here Ruby uses the then. They also print out the information different. Ruby can either use print or puts, but Python only uses prints and has it inside of parentheses along with having the double quotes. And that's about it. Also, Ruby can call numbers or variables by putting it like a hash and then in the curly brackets num, whereas in Python you just put the number, the variable right there. You don't have to put it in anything. And then Ruby also has an end function, so that's how you know when the statement has come to a complete stop. So in the case statement, unlike that of Python or C++, you don't have to put case 1, case 2, or default case. It's more of, I want to say, like if else statement, because it has like when and else. So if it's not this statement 1 or statement 2, then it has to be unknown input. So for the while statement, you have it looking very similar again, because you have the colon, which is different than the do, and then they add functions or increment functions similar. So you can just do this, or you can also put sum plus equals to I. That also works. Also that you also have the end right here, and then again you see the hash with the double. And over here you see how the print statement is different than that is here. So for the for loop in Python is really small, and it's really small inside of Ruby too, other than Ruby has 3 lines and Python has 2. So with Python you just have to do x is in 0 to 9, and then it'll print out 0 to 9. And in Ruby, you know, I used I, so instead x, so I is in 0 to 9, and you do instead of putting your colon. And that way, once you do that, you put, and then it'll print out all of the I numbers, so you'll have 0 to 9 being printed, and then you put your end statement. If you don't put your end, you will have a syntax error and the program won't run. So this is where you will get error handling, but we'll come back to that later. So for array each statement is something that is particularly for Ruby. In Python, I was researching it, and they said you can do it similar to this, but it would be easier just to do it inside of a for loop because it would be simpler. Whereas with array each statement, it just looks inside and it puts it in there, so you wouldn't have to go and put in numbers one by one. And then you have a breakneck statement. So a breakneck statement just talks about breaking or next. So once you come here, it'll automatically stop and return. This is something that we learn inside of C++. It's just break all around the ball. And redo. So redo is something that only Ruby has, and Python does not have it. And basically it's just like telling the function to just continue to redo it over and over and over again. So this will always run once the statement up here is true.
Now we're going to talk about the subprograms. Like other subject-oriented languages, subprograms in Ruby are called methods. Ruby subprogram headers are also defined with DEF for define. Since everything is Ruby is an object, method invocation are messages that are sent to objects. Here's an example of method. Next is exception handling. An exception is an special kind of object, an instance of class, exception, or descendant of that class that represents some kind of exceptional condition. It indicates that something has gone wrong. when it occurs, an exception is raised. By default, Ruby programs terminate when an exception occurs. But it is possible to declare exception handlers. An exception handler is a block of code that is executed if an exception occurs during the execution of some block of code. Raising an exception means stopping normal execution of the program and transferring the flow of control to the exception handling code, where you either deal with the problem that's been encoded or exit the program completely. Which of these happen, dealing with it or aborting the program, depends on whether you have provided a rescue clause. Rescue is a fundamental part of the Ruby language. If you haven't provided such a clause, the program terminates if you have control flow to the rescue clause. Here we have an exception handling example. This is the code, and since there is an error inside, you have the output here, and then it exits the code.
So I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. So just to sum it up, we wanted to do a pros and cons. So Ruby has a huge and active community. It has a great amount of helpful tools and libraries. It's time effective and it's popular among the big companies such as Twitch, GitHub, Airbnb, and Spotify. Some cons are its storage of flexibility. It is continuously evolving, performance time, and the price of a mistake. So now we're going to show you an example. We're going to do a short demo. So Ruby has a lot of IDEs. One environment that is really good that is made for Ruby is called Atom. But I'm just using an online Ruby executor. So I'm using the latest version of Ruby. It's 2.41. And right now we're just going to do print out hello world. You can put puts hello, and then you can put print. Print and puts does the same thing. So I just wanted to show you that. And exclamation mark. They should all print out on different lines except puts. And see, that's really cool. So puts connects to the end of this while print makes a separate line. If you want to do a string, we can give someone the name Alex, and we can tie his name to a string. So we can say puts, and then we can say there was a man named, and just put sign and put the name variable right there, and it should print out that was a man named Alex. We can also do, I also want to show you there are different ways for you to add a name to the end of a string that is hard coded into a function. So you can do the name is Alex again. Make sure you put your two quotation marks, and then we can say put quotation mark name is, and we have to do the hash function that we talked about earlier in the squiggly brackets name. Put your name is, but we use the plus sign as earlier and do name, and it should come out to the same thing. We would have to add a space here, and now they look at are and not you. Totally the same. We can also do a little mathematical expressions. So you can put 2 times 3, and this just gives you the multiplication. You can do this with multiplication, addition, minus. All of them will give you the same thing. The cool thing and the different thing with this is that if you want to do exponent, you do double multiplication, and you can do 2 to 3. So the answer there should be 8. And then we know this one. This is the module function. So this is how you get a remainder. You can do puts, and you can do out of operations. You can also do puts, and you can, the cool thing is you can do an int and a double, and you will get an answer. So if you see, you all get an answer. So 6, 2 times 3 is 6. 2 to the power 3 is 8. The remainder of 10 to divided by 3 is 1. 1 plus 2 times 3 is 7. And then 10 divided by 3. Now there are some built-in math functions. So you have the square root function. So it's just this times 144, 144. And then put my, and you can also do log. So we'll do the log of 0. And if you execute it, you get 12.0 and negative infinity. So you know that. And we can also return functions. So if we want to return, we can make a function. We can need it add. So number 1 and number 2, 99. And that's just us declaring those as to what we want, how big we want them to be. So 1 can be any number from negative infinity to positive infinity, and negative 2 can only be 99. And number 1 plus number 2, and then we can end it. We have to put the end function. Then the sum equals the sum. So result equals the sum, and we can put 4 and 3. And if we put sum, we'll get so you see I was returning the wrong thing. I need to return what I'm saving it into. This is just a simple error rushing, and that's where I'll get my 7. So that's it for the demo. I hope that it was very helpful.